Ooh, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Sabzu, the rated R radio star. I was going to try this one on. In fact, I'll try this one on right now. The Thriller, known as Savzilla.
Of New Hampshire?
Yeah.
Known as Savzilla. I like that one.
Or the Thriller that is Savzilla. I kind of dig that. You know?
That's great.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I think that's pretty good. I'm not going to say where I got that from, but that's all right. So anyway, it's time for the Relationship Rhombus Show, folks. That means, of course, you're being joined by myself, the Golden Stallion, and, of course, the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy is here.
Woo!
In action. And, this isn't going to be like a shorter one. I mean, I'm not like planning on it being shorter, but we only have a couple things we're going to really get into. But I think that they're deep. They're deep. And
this is going to be a great show, folks. If you're somehow hearing this and you're not a patron of Sovryn Tech, you need to go to patreon.com. No.
Yeah, you can just go to sovryntech.com now.
Sovryntech.com, SOVRYNTech.com. Sign up. And, you might not know this, but if you give Brian $5 a month, you get the User Podcast, which I've really been enjoying. This is awesome. Like, this is something I listen to over and over again. Yeah,
thanks. Yeah, so lots of cool stuff when you get into the $5 level.
But for just $1, you get the Relationship Rhombus.
Yeah. And, so I just want to bring this up quickly. That is, I did a poll, and this was for all patrons, not $5 or $1, just like anybody that's a patron. I put out a poll. I could have made it public, really, would have been fine, but I really consider the patrons of any level to be executive producers of the show. In a very real way, they're the people I do this show for. Like that I do Sovryn Tech for now. It's gotten to that point. The people that are like financially invested in the show, even if it's just $1 a month, I'm doing this for you. You are really making it worth my while. And you are, so I put out a poll this morning, on the day that this is going to end up getting released. And I'll mention this also on the Wednesday Q&A for this week. But the poll was that I've been considering, and this is based on some research and some other things going on. You can read about it at the poll by just going to the Patreon page, going to sovryntech.com. You should get it right in your email anyway. But I've been considering having the Sovryn Tech Prime show go down from 2 hours to 1 hour, which a lot of people don't realize. Sovryn Tech was originally only an hour. Actually, I think originally I only thought about it being like 30 minutes. And then it turned into an hour, and then it just turned into like so much after an hour. I was just like, well, fuck, we'll do 2 hours every week. But for a good while, it only went an hour a week. So it's not like this is unprecedented.
I sort of remember that. Like, just barely. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. So if you want to share your thoughts on that possibility, I'll tell you right now with the poll, it's leaning heavily towards going down to 1 hour, but there's certain advantages that come with that. I explain all of that in the poll, but if you want to take a part of that, if you're listening to this and you want to take part in that, go get your vote in. Okay. This is a vote that actually matters. It's okay. Like this vote has ramifications and it only matters to Sovryn Tech, but it's one that actually matters as to where if you're voting in some kind of political horseshit, it's just that horseshit. So, I just want to make people aware of that, but this is something that I think going down to an hour could be very beneficial for both the show, for other projects that people are dying for me to get out there and for me to do, and just for my own, in many ways, kind of my own sanity. But, if everybody said, no, we really want you to just keep doing a 2 hour show, I would still do it, because again, I want to make sure, when you're financially invested in this with me, that being the patrons, I want you to have some say. Like, that's all right. I mean, I'm the creator, so I can say, well, I'll do whatever I want, but really, I care about what you people think. I really do. I'm not kidding about that. There's most people on planet Earth, I don't give a shit what they think, but these are people that I do. So anyway, do take part in that. You'll find that was posted today if you're listening to this on the day that this was posted. So anyway, Stephanie, speaking of things getting in your email box, or your email inbox.
I got an interesting email today.
Tell me about this email. You mentioned it earlier, and I'm like, wait, what?
So, okay, this wasn't actually the name who it was from, but like this email popped up in my main inbox. Uh-huh. And it was from I want to say Natalia Rombova, but I know that was not the real name.
Yeah,
That's the name of a character in the Sovryn universe.
Yeah.
But it was some Russian sounding name like that.
Okay.
And so I'm like, oh, is this a client or something? So I opened up the email and it said, you visited a porn site that was administrated by my malware, and I have a video. I got access to your webcam, and I have a video of you masturbating, and I'm going to send it to all your contacts unless you give me $600 in Bitcoin. Just pay up. And I was like, oh, Natalia, this is such bullshit, because I never masturbate in front of my computer, and I never go to porn sites. So I don't know how she got my email, but but it wasn't from me going to a porn site, I can tell you that. So I deleted it, but I was like, how did this get past the spam filter?
So you didn't fuck with them at all?
No, I'm not one to tempt fate in that way.
Here's the thing.
I'm just gonna.
Now, granted, a lot of times you get an email like that, right? If you respond to it, if you just respond to it, like
right. I was afraid if I even opened it, I was just looking at the preview. It's like I didn't even want to click on anything in it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to discuss a couple things, but first I want to say, if I got this email, okay, now I have my shit locked down, and I'll explain how people should lock their shit down here for a second. So there, you're getting a little tech. In this episode of Relationship Rhombus, I would have emailed them back and said, no, just send me the link for where you post it. Like, I want to see it too. If it was me.
Yeah, you were saying, I was describing this email to Brian during dinner, and he was like, yeah, let him see my big dick.
Yeah, I don't care.
Let every one of my contacts see my big dick.
There you go. Let it rip. I mean, shit, it'd probably be good advertising for me, but I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I would have fucked with
the
them.
Brian Sovryn sex tape.
That's right.
But you don't go to porn sites either.
No.
At least not that I know of.
No.
But I don't think you do.
Yeah, I mean, I have, but not for like the reasons that people go to porn sites.
No, you're doing security research.
Like, I'm genuinely doing security research, both the security of my computer and my pants. And no, I'm kidding.
I mean, who needs to go to a porn site when you have the Sovereign Universe Volume 1 erotic fiction stories that you can jerk off to your heart's content right on your Kindle with no webcam?
I can write my own porn. I have my own universe that I live in. I don't need to go to these fucking sites. I mean, I'm a creative force. But anyway, so I want to say that if you wanted to fuck with this person, I would recommend that you have your shit locked down. Now, Stephanie, I'm just going to ask you this. Okay. Was this a Gmail account? If you don't want to answer.
It was a Gmail.
All right.
Well, actually, it was either a Gmail account or it was an address that forwarded to my Gmail account. Okay,
but Gmail was kind of involved here. So the first thing I recommend to people is that do sign up for Google's Advanced Protection Program, which will pretty much, or at Google and in other businesses that have implemented it, it is like done a 100% stop on phishing attacks, which is what a lot of these kind of emails would be engaging in. This will require you to have a YubiKey, actually require you to have 2 of them. But I recommend that you do that. It's totally free. And, I have mine set up that way, and I think that that's a great thing. The other thing that you want to do to stop this, even if you were worried that, oh shit, I actually might have been masturbating in front of my computer. Okay, the 2 things I want.
For a second, I was like, "Did I?"
I'm not going to say anything. Okay, so I was about to make a comment, but I'll hold back. Anyway, so the other thing is on your browser. If you're using Firefox or Chrome, and honestly, like if you're using Opera, you can just get the Chrome extension compatibility thing on Opera, and you install uBlock Origin, okay, which is your ad blocker. That'll block most malicious kind of content that could be on a porn site. And I also recommend installing the Malwarebytes extension, which I'm rather fond of. It's in beta, but I think it's a nice extra bit of protection.
Check and check.
Yeah, it's it's a condom for your browser. So that'll
yeah, you really need that.
Yeah, that would have, with those running, you have much more certainty that even if you thought maybe you did masturbate, and I'm not saying you, Stephanie, I'm saying the indefinite you.
Or maybe you just went to some sketchy site that's injecting spyware onto your computer.
Yeah, those 2 things would have either halted you from getting to the site or would have been blocking what the site had to offer in the first place. So there's my hot tips for if you get an email like that. Protect your Gmail. If it's a Gmail account, protect your Gmail account with the Advanced Protection Program from from Google, and then make sure you have uBlock Origin and Malwarebytes installed. And honestly, other than like maybe LastPass, I don't recommend any other browser extensions at all. So you really should be running very light on browser extensions. I mean, or if you have Mailvelope for PGP, that's fine. But otherwise, keep it really trim because those extensions could have actually caused exactly what you're talking about or what they claimed happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some sites say, hey, would you install this extension, please? You know, to
view the site or something. To view the site,
yeah, or something like this. And, or to be able to see free porn on this site and all that. And I mean, that could have been a problem. You really want to keep this stuff trim. But
that's anyway. How they get you with the porn.
Yeah, yeah. But
either the porn or the Nigerian bank scam.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I know I'm a guy and it's different for women. Like, I know there's a lot more on the line for women if they appear nude on the internet, you know, so I want to be sensitive to that. But like, really, I genuinely actually would not give a shit if somehow I ended up on the internet, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of any women I know who masturbate in front of their cameras or in front of their computer without being a cam girl.
Oh, well, you know,
I was going to say, I know, do that and get paid for it as a cam girl.
Yeah, or they do it to share it or something on purpose. You know, certainly, you know, I know of people that do that sort of thing.
Yeah, but, yeah. Which now there's these incels that are reporting cam girls to the IRS and stuff. Have you heard about this?
Holy shit.
Yeah. Can you fucking believe that?
It's so stupid. From them. Anyway.
Yeah, you believe anything, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I was trying to think of like women I know who actually masturbate in front of their computer or phone to porn. And one of my ex-girlfriends would masturbate to porn on her phone, but she was like in the dark. So I don't think they'd be able to see her.
I don't know. with these 4K fucking cameras that they're putting on these things and everything.
Yeah, but the selfie camera?
I mean, the light from the screen could be enough. I mean, Apple uses the light from the screen to act as a flash for the front camera. You know?
I guess that's true.
But
your bits are down there and your phone's in your face.
Yeah. Look, I'm telling you, if your cock's out or your puss is out or something like that, like you use a porn cam, you understand. Okay. My favorite model is my Vivitar, which I've had for over a decade. Mm-hmm. That doesn't connect to the internet for shit. You know, and it uses a very ancient form of USB. I mean, it's like connecting on both sides and all that. Like, I mean, this thing is as unlikely to connect to the internet in any possible way as anything could be. And and it runs off of a memory card and everything. I love this thing. You get something like that. And that's about the best shot you've got. You know, if you want to, if in front of any camera, that's the only camera you ever want to be in front of if you're going to do it. Mm. So anyway, that's another conversation for another time. But we got in a great question. Actually got sent into my email address, but it specifically says it was for a Relationship Rhombus. It says Relationship Rhombus question. So initially I was going to answer it on the Sovryn Tech Prime episode, but I didn't even get to the important messages segment this week anyway. So it worked out. But then we have an interesting story that I want to get into. But both of these, I'm kind of I don't know, but I'm kind of thinking you and I might have different opinions. Like not that we're going to have a conflict or argument, but I think we might not exactly see eye to eye on both of these subjects, the question and on the story that I have. So
well, it'll make for an interesting discussion then.
Yeah, what the hell? So let's get into the question. Okay, it's more like 2 or 3 questions.
Okay,
but, it's fairly short. How long do you think you have to know someone to be in love with them? Is there a certain amount of time, or is it how well you know them? Or is it just how you feel that matters? I would like to hear your thoughts on this if you wish to cover it. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, we wish to cover this.
Yeah.
This is a great question. Really great.
So, I mean, it is kind of one question, but like there's expansion upon it, right? So it's, how long do you think you have to know someone to be in love with them? Is there a certain amount of time, or is it how well you know them? Or is it just how you feel that matters? Is it only the feeling that matters? Or is it something else entirely than what they didn't think up?
Right.
Which I think there might be. So yeah, Stephanie, how long do you think you have to know someone to be in love with them?
First of all, I think all of these questions can be answered with something that's probably going to sound like a bullshit non-answer, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's very important.
Okay.
The word love, in love, it sucks. It's so non-specific.
Oh, love's a shitty word.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean to say that you're in love with someone?
Yeah.
Right. It could mean all kinds of different things. Right.
Yeah. In fact, we're going to talk about texting here a little later. One of the benefits, I think, to texting is the multitude of heart emojis, and that those have all been ascribed different meanings. Like a blue heart is between friends. A purple heart is, or like a pinkish heart is like growing feelings. A red heart is red hot love, or a yellow heart is like admiration.
Yeah.
And that's great. Like, and in fact, people should recognize exactly the point you're making just by the fact that the heart emoji have been codified.
Yes.
To mean different things, because we know that there's different kinds of love, right? What does in love actually mean? It's a great point to bring up. Please continue.
Yeah. No, there's really different flavors of love. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we call it all love in the English language, but I think in other languages, they probably have more specialized terms for love. There's definitely those Greek terms that were like, describing different types of love.
Sure.
There's like kind of a family type of love.
Right.
There's like an erotic love. There's like a respect, admiration kind of love, and so all of these things are, really different feelings, or at least different flavors of a similar feeling. They're under the same umbrella, but they're not quite the same thing.
Yeah. Now, I think it's pretty clear this person, or I think it's heavily implied, this person's talking about romantic love.
Yeah, romantic love, but what even type of romantic love, right? Is it like, because, some people will say, I love you to every person they have sex with.
Sure.
Because they feel this combination of chemicals and lust, but they really might not know that person very well. They just are saying it. Okay.
Well, I'm going to pare this down for this person.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's fairly obvious that they are wondering, this is someone I want to have a romantic relationship. I assume it means they also want to have sexual contact. It is long term. Mm-hmm. Like this is a tradition. I don't want to use the term traditional because I don't want that to get played with. This is what people expect a boyfriend, girlfriend, or man, man and wife situation.
Okay.
I think that's kind of I think that's,
are they heterosexual?
That I can't say because they didn't give their name.
Okay.
And nor their email address, so I have nothing to guess.
Okay.
Off of.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was just pointing out that you said boyfriend, girlfriend, but that might not be what it's like. Maybe.
Yeah, no, it's a great point to bring up.
Different genders.
Boyfriend.
Yeah.
Absolutely, which is fine, I don't think it changes. I think in that sense,
I
love
agree.
is love.
I think it's the same thing, and I'm just dancing around it.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to have that discussion because, whenever someone says to me, I love you, Stephanie, mm-hmm. I say, tell me what that means to you. Mm-hmm. Because it can mean different things to different people. And I've actually been burned by hearing someone say, I love you to me, and thinking that they meant one thing, but what they really meant was something different than what I understood.
Yeah. Well,
and my idea of love carried some assumptions with it that weren't what that person meant.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a problem right there if a person is saying I love you and there's no context, like they don't expand upon it in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Or it's not very clear based upon what just happened, what inspired them to say, I love you. But I think, just about anything in a relationship, it's a great thing to ask questions of, well, what inspired you to say that? Like why do you say that? And so on. I think those are great things to say. And if you find them annoying, it's not love. If somebody like asks you those kinds of questions, I mean, they want to know, they want to hear, what your heart is singing, if it's love. And I think that's important. So sure. Yeah. To keep from getting burned on that's pretty key.
Yeah. Well, some people might find that annoying because they prefer not to overthink it. They're just enjoying the feeling, but
yeah, but then that's not love. That's probably some form of lust.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe it could be love. It's not really for me to judge, but that's not me. Like mm-hmm. I do like to analyze it and define exactly what is meant by that word.
Right.
But some people might not want to, or they might feel like, why should we have to talk about it? Because we definitely understand each other and we're on the same page and we feel the same way.
Yeah.
Some people might feel that way. But anyway, so love is definitely describing a body feeling, like a hormonal feeling. And when you're feeling love, your brain is releasing all these neurochemicals that are really only released during a relationship with someone that touches you deeply.
Right.
And so I think what they're describing when they say love is just feeling these hormones floating around. And they can really have an influence on you, make you do things that you wouldn't normally do. And so that's part of the fun feeling of love. It's a good feeling.
Sure.
But it's also a bit like being under the influence of some kind of brain chemicals. And you might need to be aware of that or careful, even though you're enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean,
to answer the question.
Yeah, if you don't have an answer, that's okay. I'll just answer it.
I do.
Yeah.
I do think it depends on how well you know the person, because I don't think you can love someone really without knowing them.
Okay.
And getting to know someone, at least for me, and I think it's this way for most people, getting to know someone and liking what you find out makes you love them. It creates this intimacy and this feeling that enables the release of all these hormones that feels like love.
Yeah.
So I think it does depend on how well you know the person. Now, what's the time frame on that? It's possible to get to know someone pretty well in a short amount of time. I don't know if I could put an exact time frame on it, but some people experience this thing that they call love at first sight, where they see someone and they feel this instant connection with that person just based on looking at them and not talking to them or knowing them very well.
Right.
Now, I think that's not actually really, I wouldn't describe that as love. I would say maybe that's chemistry at first sight. But that can turn into love if you get to know the person and they're also really awesome.
Yeah.
In addition to that instant physical chemistry that's there.
Yeah, so a couple things that I want to bring up based on what you're saying so far. And I don't necessarily disagree with much of what you're saying. But one thing I want to bring up is that time is not, we have objective measurements of time, but time is kind of a subjective thing in people's minds. Because here's the thing. You can say, well, I've only known this person 2 weeks, but what if you spent 8 hours a day with that person for 2 weeks? That's more than what most people who date, for like an hour a night for a couple weeks, maybe 2-3 days a week or something like that. Like that is a very different time frame. And you can get to know someone very quickly in that time. So if you said to somebody, well, I've known them for 2 weeks, a lot of people could look at you like you're nuts. It's like, well, yeah, but you don't understand. It's not like I spent 2 weeks with them. I spent like hours upon hours upon hours a day for that 2 weeks to get to know
and
this
what
person.
Are you talking about? Are you talking about your childhood? Are you talking about your interests and your dreams and hopes? And
how intimate, not necessarily romantic, but how intimate are the conversations?
Yeah. How well are you really getting to know that person through those questions?
Yeah. Now, the other point that I want to bring up, and I think I actually kind of lost it. So the point you mentioned, because there's another thing that, the love at first sight. This is it. So with love at first sight, if both people are feeling it, like genuinely feeling it, I could only speculate, and I don't wish to speculate right now. I cannot explain it very well, but I think there might be something to that. Like there might be something more that we don't exactly understand as humans. And we're understanding a lot more about human connection all the time, like the importance of smell, like the genuine scientifically provable, replicable importance of smell between two human beings is pretty new to science. Okay. And how it causes attraction and so on. And like you said, that could be, considered chemical, but yeah, when both people are feeling it, I'm open to some interpretation on that, and that there might be something a little bit more, and I don't write it off right away. But in general, like if you are just feeling it, well, I don't know that necessarily constitutes as like love at first sight, or that's like something legitimate.
No, that's a creepy stalker.
Yeah, that gets strange, right? So those are the only two things that I would expound upon of what you had said so far. So the other thing they had said, or is it just how you feel that matters?
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I was just about to address that, actually. I'm glad you brought that up.
Sure.
So, yes, I think how you feel is what defines love, and that is like some kind of hormonal and neurochemical state. But I think that state is usually only unlocked under certain conditions.
Yeah.
And some people might fall in love more easily than other people. But for them, and there might be lots of unconscious stuff going on that leads them to fall in love. But I don't think you get that real love state, the real emotion of love with the connection at first sight. Like, it's not as strong, right? You actually have to get to be talking to the person, knowing them, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think there might be something about it being at least a little bit mutual too, because like I've had crushes on people, I've definitely felt strong feelings for people that didn't return those feelings to me.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't even know them. Maybe it was like a celebrity or something, just a celebrity crush. And yeah, like you feel something, you feel like there's that excitement when you see them. You're like, oh, isn't this person the greatest? Aren't they so beautiful? I wish I could be with them, that kind of thing. But it's different. It's like a whole other level when the other person feels it for you too, and you know it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a deeper possibility of unlocking that hormonal and neurochemical state of love when it's actually mutual.
Yeah. I'm going to say to this that for it to be a love that lasts, it takes a lot of time. Because I think, and I've said this many times, you got to be best friends first. You got to be friends first. Like if you're not, there's just so many challenges you're going to run into within love that you're not going to make it, or you're most likely not going to make it, or at the very least, it won't be very healthy, even though healthy is subjective. But, yeah. So with that said, I mean, honestly, like, I don't know if I would express to someone, just me, this is my own opinion. Okay. Separate from yours. Right. Like, I don't know if I would express that, even just as a matter of tact, even if maybe I was feeling it. I don't know if I'd express it. I'd probably wait like 6 months at least,
You'd be cautious, right?
I'd be super cautious. So
because why? You're not sure if it's real, or you're not sure if they're going to return it.
Well, I want to see some signs, and, and to know that I have a great friend that I could even love as just a friend, Blue Heart. I'd need 6 months, I think. I think. Now granted, like I said, how much time are you actually taking within each day of that 6 months? How many hours are within that 6 months? Very different story. So it's tough to put an exact timeline on it. But just speaking on average, if you work 45 hours a week and so on, you couldn't possibly spend that much time with the person unless they're a coworker. And if it's a coworker, you got to be extra cautious, because you could just fall in love with each other because you have shared trauma of the workplace, right? Or you're in love with each other because of the project that you're working on or something. And it's what they call a project partner. I mean, and that can be that can look like love, but it's not. Right.
So it can be an illusion sometimes that tricks you into thinking that you're feeling that way, but it could be shattered very easily when you find out the truth or something.
Right. Now, if the emailer has known this person for years, well, yeah, then of course it could be love right now. Sure. If you just met them last week, I don't know. A couple months, yeah, maybe. I mean, and again, it comes down to what kind of time frame we're talking about here. How much time is actually being spent. And I don't know what to say in hours. Like, I don't know. Because it also depends even then what you're doing within those hours with this person to really know whether or not it's love.
Yeah, it's really hard to define, like, reaching that level of intimacy. But I guess the answer is you know it when you feel it. And the feeling is important because the feeling is representing what's going on in your brain with the brain chemicals. So that's why I would define it that way. And I just want to say something about the idea of the phrase falling in love. Like, I didn't really think about that very much for most of my life, but now I think I understand what that means, because sometimes it's just like, you can't help it. You're like falling, you're tripping or something like that.
Yeah, you leap without looking.
No, not that you leap without looking. It's just like, it's something that happens to you that almost feels like beyond your control sometimes.
I see. Yeah. Well, as Aerosmith said, falling in love is hard on the knees.
You're right. But it's like, have you ever had that feeling, Brian, where you're falling for someone and you might even be trying to stop yourself, but it's just happening and you're just like, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and maybe this is the most important point to bring up, isn't even the time frame, because again, that's really tough to gauge. I do think that there needs to be a certain amount of time. And I do think the longer you take on it, because here's not that I necessarily believe in meant to be, But if it's love and it's mutual, it's going to happen. Okay. And look, even if, say you're a guy and you fall in love with this gal and she already has a guy or something like that, just trust me, be patient. Okay. Give that guy enough rope. He will hang himself eventually. All right. he just will. All right. Trust me. It's the nature of things. He's a guy. So
are you hanging yourself?
Me? I am a monster. Thank you. Also, I am talking about men of today. I am the man of tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So
that's the difference.
The
there.
rules do not apply when it comes to the Golden Stallion. But I don't think you'd disagree much either, Stephanie. But anyway,
you're very special.
Thank you. So that's what my mommy said. No, she didn't. That's the problem. Yeah. Anyway,
this is a different show. This is the childhood rhombus.
Yeah, childhood. Yeah, right. Fuck. Where was I going with that?
Are we going on to the next thing about texting, or do we say everything about love?
Yeah, I guess we did, but I guess I'm just saying I think it takes time. I think it needs to take time. I think you need to be patient with it. It is not something you ever want to rush. And just, me, I'm 37 years old. I've been through some relationships, and I can just tell you from experience, even if you think it's the worst situation right now and there's not a chance in hell you're going to give it that guy or gal, just wait. They're like, have the patience, just be there as a friend for them, let it take the time. And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And there are a million unconscious things that we do to each other, humans that they do to each other when they communicate, that, you're not going to be able to hide that falling in love feeling. Okay. But at the very least, be respectful, even if you can't hide it. And they'll pick up on it. If they want to reciprocate, they'll reciprocate. Or if you feel like there's that moment where you're going to tell them, you're going to know when that moment hits. And I know that feels like a cop-out, like it when you feel it, or it when you see it, or whatever, but it's not. Intuition's everything. I mean, everything's case by case. There are no hard and fast rules, certainly when it comes to love. Even though I think, there's some averages that might work out.
Yeah.
But yeah, just keep that in mind. So anyway, that was good.
Yeah, I like that too.
That was good.
Yep.
So we can move on to the next thing. And maybe after you've fallen in love with this person and you've told them about your feelings and they said to you, oh, I love you too. And I got to tell you, it's all because you listen to Sovryn Tech. You have changed my life, right? I mean, that's probably how that conversation would go. I would hope. No, I know people, they've emailed me who have gotten in relationships because they were walking into a coffee shop and they heard someone else listening to Sovryn Tech.
Oh, they found their soulmate.
Yeah. Like however the hell that happened. And then they said, wait, are you listening to Brian Sovryn? And next thing you know, padoom, they are, I don't know if they're still in a relationship. That was a couple of years ago. But anyway, and look, folks, if you're listening to me, put headphones on, for fuck's sake. Like, especially if you're in a coffee place. Come on. I don't know. Anyway, that was a little, I don't know. So, all right. We got a story here that I think is interesting. And this is one where I don't know that we necessarily disagreed in the last one, but this is one where I think we might disagree on.
Oh, okay. Bring it on. So that's interesting.
So this is from, I think, the New Yorker. It's like a side kind of thing. I'm guessing it's like almost like a blog for them, which is called The Cut. And it's dating. This is from October 9th, 2018. Okay. So it's fairly fresh. Dating Without Texting is the Absolute Best by Clara Archfager. And so it's by a woman. Okay. So, a lot of people are just going to ignore it now, but I'll start reading it. On our third date, he proposed something unexpected. So this is a guy. She's the writer. This is a gal. She's the writer. She's dating a guy.
Okay.
Here's what he proposed. Can we not text? As in meaning, like, could we stop texting? Reading on. We were sitting on the floor of his living room on one of the first warm nights of spring. Plates of grilled chicken thighs, Greek salad, buttery pita, and garlicky tzatziki I don't know what the hell that is.
Tzatziki. It's a sauce. It's
All right, I do know what that
yogurt
is.
sauce.
Okay, I've just never seen it spelled. Balanced in our laps. I sipped my wine and was perhaps slightly buzzed. Maybe that's why his question didn't throw me. To be honest, I found it kind of thrilling. Recently, I'd noticed a pattern in my dating habits. I'd meet someone, and next thing I knew, we were texting more frequently than I text my best friends. The difference, of course, is that texting your best friends is a fun diversion, whereas texting someone you're interested in can feel exhilarating, but also exhausting. Every interaction is laden with meaning. How long should I wait to write back? What does his delay imply? Is an exclamation point too much? Should I add a winking face emoji? Avoiding all of that sounded great to me, so we began to lay down some rules. During each date, we could make plans for our next one. If we needed something in between from one another, even if it was just to say hello, we would call. So it's not like, so this sort of sounds like a long distance thing, or some distance. Okay. And basically, they're not like saying, well, you don't talk to the person at all and you just trust that they're doing whatever and that they're okay. They're saying that, well, if you need to do something, you give them a phone call. Okay. And all right. So this is specifically about texting, not necessarily about just long distance communication in general. We would keep texting to logistics, like if one of us was running late, or if we needed the other to pick something up, or pick up like a key ingredient like limes for the gin and tonics or American cheese for the burgers on the way over. But the good morning, how was your day, good night banter, and the incessant distraction that came with it, all of that was off the table. And thank God for that. The truth is, texting had already derailed our relationship once. It was a few days after our second date, which had been a dream. I'd invited him for dinner, something that was significant for me, both the preparation and having someone in my home. Conversation and first kisses flowed. During our meal, we made plans to get together the following week for a lunch in Sunset Park. I said I would do research on where we should go. He texted on Sunday to follow up, saying Wednesday or Friday worked best for him, but his text landed right in the middle of an unexpected family crisis. Not wanting to leave him hanging, but also not wanting to share the details of my family situation, I texted back, running around, text you in a bit, kissy face. But then I didn't, for 24 hours. I was emotionally spent from dealing with my family, and while everything was, for the most part, fine, I just didn't have the energy to reply, not to mention make plans for a date. By Monday afternoon, he caved and sent a novel of a message. He said that he thought it was strange not to have heard from me and that he could handle it if I didn't want to continue seeing him, but he just wanted to make sure I was okay. I remember emerging from the subway, seeing his words fill my phone screen and feeling flooded with both guilt and frustration. Guilt that I'd put him through the turmoil, but frustration over the responsibility of dealing with another person's emotions at a time when I felt so drained. On an impulse, I dialed him right then and broke things off. Quote, I don't think I'm a good person to date right now. End quote, I said, which is, of course, really just a coward's way of saying you're not interested in seeing someone again. We said goodbye and hang up. When I woke up the next morning, I hadn't exactly changed my mind, but I felt that there was still something between us worth exploring, or at least talking about. So I texted him to propose the third date he had been trying to schedule when I dumped him. Not Sunset Park, just a quiet dinner at his place. And so we found ourselves sitting on his living room floor with chicken thighs, wine, and later homemade chocolate chip cookies, discussing the possibility of continuing to see each other, but ending our texting relationship. He said he was trying to finish a draft of a book, so he needed long stretches of uninterrupted time to focus on work. Putting his phone on airplane mode wouldn't do. He didn't love the idea of a text from me just sitting there going unanswered for hours on end. If I needed to be in touch, he wanted to be there. He said he wanted to find a way to keep the fire of his productivity going while also investing in me. Maybe, we thought, ruling text messages out altogether would be a weird way to do that. We set the date for our next hang, kissed goodnight, and that was that. In the past, dating someone new would leave me drained and weirdly sad. It wasn't that I was unsure of the guy's feelings. It happened with people I knew, who I knew really liked me. Looking back, I think the sadness came from a subconscious knowing that the person wasn't right for me. But at the time, I didn't have the space to fully process that, in part because it was available at all times via my phone. Even if I didn't respond to a text right away, the message would be hanging over me and firing warning signs back in the other direction. Unlike a friendship where not responding to a text for 2 hours or 2 days is acceptable, in dating, both the act of texting and not texting communicates something. How fast or how slow you respond says something to the other person. But this time I felt excited and energized. With texting off the table, I found I could live my own life much more easily. I just made a career change and had a new block of free time. I was eager to use that time exactly how I wanted: reading, writing, eating, cooking, and exploring my city on my own time. I was excited to be dating someone new, but I didn't want that to overtake this crucial downtime for me, which I was using to gain clarity on the direction and purpose of my own life. I spent my days exactly as I saw fit, and while I did, my mind wasn't filled with worry over when he would text me or whether I should text him. My hand didn't reflexively reach for my phone 12+ times a day. Anticipation took that anxiety's place. I was excited to tell him about all the things I was reading, seeing, and doing. I had so many questions for him. How was his week? How was his writing? What did he eat? What was he reading? There was so much to talk about. The less we were in touch, the better it was once we were together. Conversation poured out of us as if we had been turned upside down. We could barely keep up, often having to go back to a complete thought before jumping to the next subject. But most importantly, I could miss him. And doing so helped me understand how I felt about this person, something that had been clouded by all the superfluous, though sweet, communication in the past. I liked him a lot. I couldn't wait to see him again. But in the meantime, I'd focus on my own life. So that's the story.
Sounds a lot like what dating was like before there were smartphones,
right.
Doesn't it?
Yes, or cell phones in general, before there was texting. Yeah, I'm kind of reminded, there's like a Lordi song where she talks about that, where like the importance of punctuation, like in a text, what could it mean and all this stuff. And she's kind of hitting at like, it's just crazy, how much we put into that bit of language, And I also think it raises an interesting point that people are saying we don't know how to talk to each other anymore and all that. Oh, no, I think we're actually talking to each other with much more precision in many ways. And we're being much more precise with our language, or at least, people that learned good grammar in the first place are. So, but that's besides the point. What is your take on this whole story here? I mean, your point is perfectly valid. That, Stephanie, that, this is what it was like to date back in the day, right?
Yeah.
So, and I mean, and I would add into that even like email kind of created the same situation. So we're talking perhaps even like pre-internet that, or, pre-consumer internet, I should say, that this is what dating was like. So, but what's your take? What do you think? How do you feel about what Clara here had to say?
I mean, I think that's great that they figured out that works for them. It takes a certain amount of courage or awareness or
trust.
Trust, yeah, definitely. To go outside of what is normally done, or to just even question, hey, like, nowadays most people are just texting each other all day. Does that really work for me? Does that work for us? Could this conflict that happened in our relationship be related to the fact that we're texting all the time?
Yeah.
And I think that's great that they're thinking about those things consciously, because most people just don't even bother to think about it, or they're afraid to question what everyone else does.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. Regardless of what this is about, to see some intentionality, some serious mutual intentionality in a relationship is rare and beautiful. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's a great point to bring up.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as the idea of missing each other, I don't know. I mean, I've never been a huge fan of that in relationships. There's some people that just need more space than others. You know what I mean? And it sounds like this person definitely needed that space, especially to get the clarity on whether she really wanted to date this guy. And that was helpful because she realized how she felt about him in that space when he wasn't communicating with her. She was thinking, oh, I miss him. I would like to talk to him.
Yeah, I mean, this is a problem with smartphones in general, not just texting, is that they are an incessant distraction machine.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, that's the point, right? But sometimes you need space to be able to hear your own thoughts. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're not very practiced at doing that, sometimes creating that space can be helpful for some people to hear their own thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I thought that was a salient point that, like, if you're, I mean, this is something I've brought up on Sovryn Tech recently, on Sovryn Tech Prime episodes, that, like, social media gives us a very weird tether And I don't mean like an Ash Tyler to Michael Burnham kind of tether where it's like romantic or something, and keeping you in reality. It's quite the opposite. It's a tether that like loosely holds you to a lot of people, but you really don't have a relationship.
Maybe people that you wouldn't want to have a relationship with. Yeah.
Yeah. Or that, you don't, it's not really a relationship. Like it's even worse than what she's describing, where like you don't have to necessarily respond at all ever, but because they're kind of in your friends list, you sort of think you have a connection with them. So what you're bringing up kind of points at that's a bit of a problem, as far as that goes. Anyway, continue where you were going with that.
Yeah, I was thinking about whether this would work for me. Like, would I want to be in a relationship with someone that I wasn't texting?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I would. I don't think I want that much space. I think I prefer more closeness if it's a partner of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And this is describing the beginning of a relationship where they're not really sure about each other. They're trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably would need more space. But like, would you want to be in a relationship where you were living apart from that person forever and most of the day is just space and then you're not even communicating with each other? I think that would create maybe more distance in an established relationship than I would like, because yeah, sure. At the beginning, when you're getting to know each other, you're living on your own, right? You're probably not living together yet, right? But you're thinking about whether you want to.
Yeah.
And so I would want to get as much information about that person as possible and sort of spend as much time with them as possible, Yeah,
I mean, this is clearly one relationship style. Again, it's one where it sounds like there's some kind of distance. If they can only meet like once a week, there must be some kind of distance there, maybe. I don't know. So that's one thing to keep in mind, because so like you and I text each other all the time. We never leave the house though. But why are we texting each other?
To coordinate when we're going to meet.
Well, the real reason we're using text, whether we realize it or not, is because both of us, generally, the work that we do is in recording studios, be it meetings or you're actually recording an audiobook or I'm recording a podcast or whatever the fuck's going on. Like we'd never talk to each other if we like physically had to like, verbally had to talk. So we text because that is a silent form of communication, effectively, between. And also we're
but we do also go up and talk to each other.
All the time. And we just wait for when the person's like done with the mic or something like that. Sure. No, I mean, that happens too.
But if it's like, when are we going to work out or when are we going to have dinner? Like often we'll text each other if it's not really like urgent and doesn't need to be interrupting our recording for it.
Right. So, but that's another unique style of relationship where we're in the same house. Granted, like, you're upstairs, I'm way downstairs and so on. So there's some there's distance in that sense. But that's the case where it's very helpful, right? To be able to do that. But in general, like, I feel what she's saying. And in fact, there's a couple of years ago, there had been quite a bit of research done by psychologists that had suggested that text, like large amounts of texting, was detrimental to a romantic relationship and to loving at just about any stage.
It's not exactly the most connected way to communicate. Like, you're missing a lot of information there. You might get the words that someone's saying, but you don't get the body language. You don't get the touch. Definitely not.
Yeah. It's inefficient. It's just inefficient.
It's one little layer of communication. I mean, it can be very efficient. Like, if that's the best you can do and you have to communicate with someone in a situation where they can't talk or they can't be there, then sure. I mean, texting serves its purpose, right? But it's not enough to base a relationship on. Like, I don't think you could feel that love just from texting alone,
Yeah, I mean, you hear people that do, like, they fall, Signal,
sure.
The Signal app has, or, the company has even come out and said that people have fallen in love over Signal, and just Signal, and like, wow, I mean, again, love, what does that mean? And there's a lot of different ways that you feel that with someone. I feel like I've, fallen in love with someone over IRC back in the day. Granted, I was kind of young and dumb, but I did. So yeah, like, it's not I don't think anyone would argue that it's the best way to communicate. I just can't imagine that anybody would argue that way. The best way is face to face, especially when it's romance. Okay. But the idea that it could actually do more harm than good. Yeah, I buy into that. Like, I think, and it does take time. Like, if you're trying to say something important, which I would assume you would in a romantic relationship, you could end up writing, a novella to this person, just trying to explain how you feel, and how do they respond to that? Like, I get what Claire is saying here, that, like it's exhausting to have to respond with that. And it's also always nagging, like that person's there. And
especially if you don't enjoy that, or if you don't feel very comfortable with it.
Yeah. Now you can say to the other person, look, I don't expect you to respond. It's okay. Like you don't have to, but even then the other person is probably still going to feel, if they have feelings for you, they're probably going to feel like, shit, I should respond, and it becomes a bit of a stress. I mean, I think that people's minds can change about that, because just like with a friend where, you don't feel like there's anything on the line, and that they care about you enough that they'd understand if you didn't respond for a day or two. Then if people could get to that point with their relationships, again, when it's like new love blossoming and blooming, maybe that's not so easy to do, because like every little move, you're worried because you don't have the confidence and trust yet.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with like the point that that Clara brought up in the article, where she was saying that she didn't text the guy back for 24 hours. And then at that point, it was like he was starting to freak out, and he was thinking that she didn't want to talk to him. And like, when people don't know each other and they don't know each other's texting habits and preferences very well yet, they do rely on they're trying to get some kind of insight into what the other person's thinking or feeling without them communicating with them. And so they rely on these ground rules, and those can be oppressive because people just expect others to be available constantly, and they don't really honor people's personal space or emergencies that might be going on, like her family situation or whatever.
Yeah, that's a problem today.
It can put a lot of pressure to respond right away, and it can create like awkwardness if you don't follow those unspoken rules. Yeah. What even are the rules?
No, right. That's really a problem that we have today. But this gets back to what I say all the time, and what I even just said earlier, was that, you got to be friends first, because then this isn't an issue. I mean, and I've had that where someone will say, I'll respond tomorrow or something, and then they don't. And I totally understand why someone might feel a little bit slighted by the fact that the person didn't, but then also...
But you also hate to text, so you wouldn't...
Well, right.
you would understand.
That's true. I have the bias where I don't like texting anyway. Yeah. Like, I just... In fact, I dare I say I hate it. But, I mean, shit happens. Like people, and it is exhausting, especially if it's like a really long thing you got to respond to and all that. People don't have the time, don't have the energy. Whatever it happens to be, they get busy, something goes down. I mean, it happens. You don't automatically, I mean, that's kind of a problem that we have, is we automatically assume the worst. Now, that might be something that humans evolved to do, or at least some humans have evolved to do, but I'm pretty sure you can retrain your brain about that, and just don't automatically assume the worst. In fact, honestly, I think if you're a very patient person, we kind of talked about this earlier during the love question. If you're a very patient person, you might find that somebody will really appreciate that with your texting. Now, I mean, if it gets like 3 or 4 days and no one's responding, okay, well, maybe then there's a reason to start feeling weird. But like in 24 hours, come on, especially if the last thing you got was a kissy face, it's probably okay. I mean, that's just, I don't know. And this is a problem too. Everybody talks about helicopter parents. What about like helicopter partners? Who are just constantly like, you didn't respond to me right away. You didn't, do this or that. Like, where are you? Are you all right? And all.
It's interesting to see what happens when there's a conflict over that, right? When one person drops the ball and doesn't reply and is just being silent, like, how does the other partner handle that? And what comes up for them? Is it insecurity and they're wanting to get some reassurance from their partner? Is it, like just making assumptions that the partner's mad or doesn't want to talk to them? Or is it curiosity? Is it curiosity about what's going on for them? How come you didn't text? I mean, just curious. Haven't heard from you.
It's easier, right? It's easier to just not text. You know, like I think that's what Clara here.
Well, how would you respond if you were just dating someone and you'd seen them twice and you liked them and you wanted to see them again, and that same thing happened? Let's say you were the guy in that scenario, and the woman, you were trying to make plans for a third date, and she sent you that kissy face, I'll text you later, and then she didn't text you for a day. What would you think, or what would you do?
I mean, I'd be cool about it. You know, again, if it got 3 or 4 days, then maybe I'd be like, hey, what's up? You know, everything all right?
Yeah, I mean, if someone didn't text me back for a day, I honestly probably wouldn't even notice. I would forget about it. I have so much shit going on myself that it's like I wouldn't be paying attention to it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, like, that's not how I roll. Like, I would not just, like, date somebody, you know, like out of nowhere that I didn't already know fairly well. You know, again, you want to be friends first.
Oh, so you would have a pattern of communication already established.
Yeah, there'd be a comfort of communication that would be there. So
you and I used to text each other every day when we were before we were dating.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much every day.
Yeah, it wasn't maybe every day, but it was most days.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we do look too deep into texts. We do think about them too hard. We do concentrate on them too hard. I think that they do more harm than good. I think that eventually, even if your relationship kind of starts with some of that or whatever, I think eventually you got to take action. You got to get closer to the person. And I mean physically, like location. You've got to get closer to the person.
But are you talking about texts, or are you talking about long distance relationships or relationships where you don't live together?
Well, that's tough, because what's long distance relationship? Is an hour away a long distance relationship? I mean, it is for teenagers, I suppose. You know, I don't know. Like, I mean, that's kind of a subjective thing. But like, honestly, I think even if it's an hour away, that is where texting would become a little more order of the day. And I think eventually, you know, you gotta, if you're really in love, you're going to have to move, you know, you're going to have to take some action on that, because this texting business is just substandard. It just is. You know, it's not even a good fill-in in my opinion. And I'll just say it again. I think it causes more trouble than it's worth. I thought what Clara had to say about, like, you know, when we did finally see each other, we'd have so much to talk about and it would be such a more fulfilling time. I think that's absolutely true. You know, that it just would be. I mean, when you and I first started dating, like, we would call on the phone, because like I lived in a different area than where you live at that time. And it was kind of about that, really. It was about an hour or so away, something like that. And you know, we would text and everything, but like, especially at first when I would come over like every weekend, you know, I mean, we just couldn't stop talking to each other. We couldn't stop, you know, I mean,
tons to talk about.
Yeah, it was just nonstop, but that's partly because there was this buildup throughout the week that texting couldn't fulfill and that other things couldn't really fulfill.
But it was like a taste of what was to come when we talked to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We would maybe text about some stuff and then talk about it more deeply when we saw each other in person.
Yeah, but then it did get to the point where we were literally calling like every night. You know, we were texting like all the time and everything. And that's when I kind of knew, and I think you did too, whether consciously or unconsciously, but that's when I knew it's like, okay, I can't be an hour and 20, you know, minutes away from this person now.
Yeah.
Like, it's to this point. This is how we're communicating. I need to be there. And the difference of talking to each other all the time when you're actually in meet space and not over texting or even a phone call is that you are experiencing things together. So the conversation can always be flowing, you know, as to where texting and all that, like, you're doing two completely different things and one may not care at all about what the other thing is, you know, I mean, it's just a possibility. So it's different, but yeah, I think sooner or later, like, that it cannot be any kind of long-term solution. And I really feel if it's a relationship that's going to last, it has to get to the point where like texting is a complete afterthought. You know, to communicate with each other, and you are finally close together. So that's my opinion on it. But yeah, I hate texting in general. I think it's I mean, cyber sex can be sexy, you know, which that gets done through text and all that stuff like that. I can see where that can be fun, or I do know where that's fun and all of this. But in many ways, in general, texting is very unsexy, and I think it comes to a lot of stress.
Unless it's like a game that's creating anticipation for when you see each other.
Yeah, there's ways you could do it, very intentional ways. But like for talking about the big stuff or even the little stuff, I don't think it works very well. That's my opinion on it. Do you have any thoughts on all that?
Well, I have a different opinion than you on this.
Sure.
I think it's just a tool, and it's a tool to communicate with your partner. It's not the only tool. Mm-hmm. It can be a means to bring you closer so that you do have more time together in person. It can be an effective way to communicate in certain contexts or certain situations. Mm-hmm. Like anything, maybe if you're over relying on it, then it could contribute to problems because you're not getting the full spectrum of what communication has to offer. You're just getting one layer of it. So that could be an issue. And then, of course, like if it's a relationship where you're never going to be together in person, you might start to get just sucked into this texting world. And then what is your relationship really based on, right? But I don't think that texting is bad or that it is a problem for relationship. This article kind of reminds me of these people who say, "Oh, Facebook killed my relationship." Nah. No, Facebook didn't kill your relationship. Your relationship was having points of weakness to begin with that Facebook just simply magnified. You know, it's not Facebook's fault that your relationship broke up. Something else would have caused it if there was no Facebook, you know?
Yeah, but
it's just shining a light on the areas where there's weakness.
Maybe at times, but we are not ready as a species for the technology that we have.
Yeah, that's our challenge, right? Okay. That's the challenge of people in our generation is we have to figure out how to live in this digital world and not lose our minds and go crazy.
I mean, here's the thing, like what would have been done before? You know, I mean, maybe passing notes in class, or you would write like a pen pal kind of situation where you'd write this really long letter.
Well, talking on the phone.
Or talking on the phone or something like that, which talking on the phone might not have been the biggest thing. But like anything comparable to this didn't require as much constant contact. And I think the problem there is that especially when you're like first falling in love, you can be very flowery in your language. You're going to run out of shit to say if you're texting every single day that lives up to that initial shit that you put out there, you know, as to where before you'd write the gal a letter, maybe if you're kind of long distance or something, expressing your feelings, and she could just reread that and reread that and reread that. But you only had to do the one. And so you could put it all in. It's like you're a rock band and it's your first album. Okay. You're going to put all of your musical soul into that. Right. And that's a good thing. And that's great. But no, with this, you have to keep up that level. If you start off with that kind of level of, of flowery language and, pouring your heart out and all this stuff, you have to keep it up. And if you don't keep it up, then people think down the line, oh, they don't love me the same way they did at first because they used to write me in such a beautiful way. It's like, no, we run out of like even the most creative person's going to run out of shit to say in that sense.
I think that could happen with other modes of communication, not just texting.
Oh, it could, and it could happen over the phone. I agree. Like I remember in the past where talking on the phone, there'd be awkward silences, because we just run out of stuff to say because we ended up talking so damn much, But again, that's why I say that sooner or later you've got to get closer. Like the long distance thing just doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't fly. So not on a long enough timeline. It just doesn't work anymore. So, but that's my opinion on it. Do you have any comments on all that?
I kind of figured I gave so many comments on this already. I'm done talking about it.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of figured we disagree a bit on this, because like, I mean, I feel like I just hit the microphone. You enjoy, or like, you're okay with like kind of talking to people in the long distance sense.
Yes. And I'm okay with social media because texting and social media enable me to keep in contact with people that are important to me, but live far away.
Right.
And otherwise, if I just said, oh, I'm not going to text anyone, I refuse to text her, I refuse to use social media. Okay, then I'm going to be a lonely hermit. And I don't want to be a lonely hermit. I want to have friends and relationships. And I'm okay with using texting, even though it's sometimes annoying. Sometimes it's annoying to talk on Skype, but I'm okay with using it because it's a willing trade for being able to have that relationship with a person I can't easily see in person.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly when you're talking overseas, I mean, that's just the reality, I mean, because there's so many barriers, because then I could say, well, they should just move closer to you or something. Okay. Yeah. People can't just move from one country to another.
No.
I mean, that doesn't work. So there can be genuine barriers there. But anyway, yeah. So there you have it. It really depends on what kind of relationship it is, I think, as far as how texting can work within the relationship. In general, I'm not a fan. You see the usefulness of it, and your point, I think, is still salient, that, it might just be revealing the cracks in the relationship. It's not that the software or the app itself is the problem. It's that your relationship's in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and your mileage may vary. It's like,
yeah,
you're going to have to talk about it and figure out what works for you yourself. But I'm definitely not condemning texting in a blanket condemnation. Like it sounds like you are, Brian.
Yeah. Well, just make sure you use the right app, folks.
At least if you're going to text, use Signal. This is the moral of the story.
Yeah, there we go. So anyway, Stephanie, why don't we wrap this one up? It's late at night. I didn't get any sleep last night pretty much. So
I know you
I'm running on fumes right now out of my NWO cup. Thank you. So anyway, this is your Relationship Rhombus Show for November of 2018. Stephanie, as always, tons of fun to do these shows with you.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for the questions. Make sure you get them in. You can send them through email or Patreon Messenger or whatever. Get them to me. I will see all of you on the other side.